There we go. All right, are we live? Trying to check to see, are we good?
We are live.
Excellent. All right, well, welcome everyone to the first Speaker Development Graduation Minicon. I am excited that you guys are here. Thank you for coming out on this Saturday. My name is Craig Bowser, and this has been an amazing program. We have brought a number of people together to really go through a whole program, taking new and beginning speakers from the whole process of actually developing a talk. This program was really designed in cooperation with BIC, Blacks in Cybersecurity, and I want to give a big thank you to them who sponsored us. Thank you so much for really helping out and getting this program off the ground and starting this journey for these individuals who have gone through this program, who put a lot of hard work and effort into the talks that they're going to give today. We've got 8 people who have really worked hard and created some amazing presentations that I'm super excited to present. So a little bit of background. I said, my name is Craig Bowser, and I've been doing information security for about 20 years, starting out in the Air Force, and then moving into DoD and government contracting. About a year ago, I took a job as a consultant, so kind of went from one side to the other. But in that time, starting around 2007, 2008, I joined a group called Nova Hackers, an InfoSec user group called Nova Hackers, that their methodology of their group was all about, was really all about how to participation. It was started by 2 guys who were really well known in the InfoSec community, but at the same time, they really wanted to find ways to give back and build a group of individuals that really shared knowledge and helped each other become better InfoSec people, whether you're a red team, blue team, whatever. And so part of this group, the whole goal of this group was that everyone needed to contribute somehow, some way, and it didn't matter where you were in your career, you all had something to contribute. And that was so key. That was such a foundational element, that you could give a talk, you could provide information, you could teach somebody, whether you were a beginner, you had just started in InfoSec, or you were a seasoned veteran with multiple years and multiple engagements under your belt. And that was a really hard obstacle for a lot of people to overcome, that thought that they could teach somebody when it seemed like everybody knew more than them. And so that was that concept really impacted me, and I started talking at those conferences. And eventually I had talked several times, gotten to really gain some experience, that I decided I was going to submit to a conference. I had gone to ShmooCon in DC, and I was really inspired to actually do a full-length presentation at a conference, not just my user group. And so I created a talk, I submitted it to B-Sides Charm, and I submitted it to a SANS summit. And I was accepted at both of them. So I first went to speak at B-Sides Charm, and that went okay. But there was so much that I learned in reviewing that talk, in getting feedback from people, that I took all that feedback and made changes that really I got to implement at SANS, And it made such a difference that they actually asked me to come back and speak again. And since then, I've spoken regularly at a number of different events. And that thought of what I didn't know that first talk really kind of stuck with me. And so last summer, when with the murder of George Floyd and the really desire to really give back, that thought that I had just ended up being a catalyst to really try and create this kind of program. How to get more minorities to speak at conferences, how to provide the tools and knowledge that I didn't have when I first started talking to people, so that they had a platform, a foundation to grow and to build and to go out and give great talks. And so that's where this program really came about. So it was amazing to really go through this, to meet these individuals and to see them develop and create talks that they're going to present today. Before we get to that, I do want to absolutely thank two people who volunteered their time to assist in the class. These Najla Lindsay and Info Janitor just were amazing. They have brought a wealth of their own experience into the class. They were able to talk to the students and provide other insights besides what I was teaching. And the students were able to interact with them and gain some different viewpoints that really broadened their view of what they were learning in class. And so big thanks to them for just volunteering their time and going forth and doing amazing things. So thank you to you two, appreciate your time. So with that, let me just talk over what this course talked about, because we're gonna go through this again. And if you're interested, if this this appeals to you, or you think, hey, what is this about? Here's what we covered. We talked about why people talk. We talked about what kind of topics that people cover at cons. We talked about the fact that everyone has something to talk about. And that's so foundational. I mentioned it as what really inspired me. And that's really what I'm trying to inspire both the folks here, but also anyone who's listening. Everyone has something to talk about, and you can talk. And so what goes into taking that knowledge you have, that viewpoint, that special snowflake information that only you can present, how to turn that into a CFP. We had them write CFPs. We had them submit that so that we could give feedback on writing, on what they wrote and how they wrote. We talked about what it goes into writing a bio, preparing and researching your topic. We had them give 5-minute speeches so that they could practice what it means to present, to talk, and to be on stage, or in this case, virtually. We talked then about practicing their talk and how they should practice, what they should practice, how often they should practice. And then we talked about giving the talk, actually being on stage, being in front of the camera, and what it means to do that, and how they should think, how they should act. And finally, we wrapped up with just some miscellaneous things, how to be on a panel, what goes into panel presentations, how to co-present if you want to partner up with somebody to do a presentation, preparing to go on stage, being ready so that when they do the introductions and hand you the mic, you're all ready to go, how to handle questions and answers, and what to do post-presentation, what kind of activities should you plan to do and what should you expect to happen. And that all culminated into today, the graduation, the Minicon, where they get to actually present the talk that they submitted a CFP for. So without further ado, let me just go ahead and introduce you to our graduates. So we have 8 folks who have made it through the program, who have finished out. And I want to just give a big congratulations and a big hand for these people who have really done a lot of work and just put in a whole lot of effort to present to you today. So from that, I just want to say good luck to everybody. I look forward to seeing where you guys go, where this skill takes you from now on, and look forward to just the great accomplishments that I know you can do just with this added skill set, this extra feather in your cap. So now, here's our agenda for today. Trenton is going to start us off with the art of play calling. We did shuffle some people around, so ignore the times on the left there, but that's fine. Trenton, you're up with the art of play calling. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and I'll turn this over to Trenton and his talk.
Good morning, everyone. Today I'll be talking about the art of play calling, how to build an effective incident response playbook. So some of us may have watched sports and you've seen offenses or defenses make a play or stop a play, and you wonder, well, how did the defense know what was going on, or how the offense was able to exploit the defense in that way? Well, the answer is they had a playbook, and that playbook gives them systematic steps that they need to take in any event. So we could take that same tactic that they use and we can apply it in cybersecurity, because as we know, that it's no longer about if an attack will happen to you, it's when the attack will happen, and you need to know what to do to be prepared. So you don't want to end up like the guy on the next slide. He's on defense, he's fell asleep, and next thing you know, the offense is running by him and probably scored. So the first thing we want to talk about is why having a playbook is important. So the incident response playbook gives you the who, what, when, where, and why of cyber attacks. It allows you to figure out who needs to be communicated with internally, maybe even externally, and then what you guys need to do to remediate and stop the attack. And it also, like I said, gives you those predefined plans and those step-by-step procedures to deal with those specific security events. So I know you're thinking, well, this sounds like an incident response plan. And yes, they do seem similar, but there are some differences in them. So when you think about an incident response plan, your incident response plan is going to be geared for anyone in your organization to be able to pick up and read and know exactly who to call, who to contact. That's why it's geared towards like a first-time reader. And it's applicable for most security events that you go through. Now, your incident response playbook, on the other hand, is going to be more technical, and it's going to allow your team to go through those step-by-step procedures, and it's for specific events that you may occur. So next, we'll be talking about the elements of a playbook. So the incident response playbook will follow around the 4 phases of the NIST incident response lifecycle, which some of us are aware of. And sometimes those playbooks can actually break these steps down further. For example, the detection analysis step may be broken out, have their own phases. So the first thing you want to do when you're preparing an incident response playbook is you want to go through a risk assessment, and you want to identify what risks are appropriate for your organization and what assets are vulnerable. Now, you want to keep in mind that each playbook will be different depending on the organization. So no 2 playbooks will be the same. So in your first phase, in the preparation phase, you want to think about pulling your resources together. You want to know if you want vulnerability managers involved, if you want people from C-level to be involved. And then from there, you can move to your detection phase. In that, you want to define any flags or anything that may pop up that will alert you that this specific security event could be occurring. And then you can define those risks associated if that attack is actually valid. Then from there, in your analysis phase, you'll be going through and validating those flags that pop up just to make sure that this is an actual event that's going on. And then from there, you'll move on to your containment phase. And in that phase, you can identify assets that may be targeted. You can figure out how to prevent and limit any damage that's going on to try and get it covered try and get contained as quickly as possible. Your next one is your eradication phase. You can focus on eliminating anything that has caused this incident to go on, and you can start communicating with your stakeholders, whether it be someone from upper management, maybe be the internal team, the CERT team that you guys defined. And then you do the same thing in the recovery phase where you can communicate those your current activities going on, because those stakeholders are going to want to know, is this incident handled, and how quickly can you guys get back to your normal business operation? And then lastly, you want to make sure that you're defining steps for your post-incident activity. You want to do any lessons learned, you want to document what's going on, and then you may even want to assess any areas that need improvement, such as doing more configuration patching or redefining policies. So one of the last things I wanted to go over was these incident response playbook scenarios that I found. These are just some examples of templates that I found online. I do have a link to them later on in the slide, so that way you guys can always use them if you need. So the first one is going to be a ransomware playbook, and you can see that in this playbook, it's a step-by-step decision tree. So they start off with detecting a suspicious file, and then from there they moved on to if they're going to generate an MD5 hash off of that file and send it over to the malware database. You can see as the decision tree goes on, they've put different steps. They put which step was part of each phase, and you can see it break all the way down to eradication and recovery. So the next one is going to be the data theft playbook. This is the analysis step that I was talking about earlier. And you can see them defining the risk factors about which customers could be affected by the incident. And then, it's PII or any protected information compromise. And then they're going back down that decision tree from after doing the analysis to do the log collection, the evidence collection, and the data capture. The next one is the virus outbreak, the eradication step. And you can see they even decided to put a little bit of containment in this with stopping the spread, running it in the sandbox, and analyzing forensics. And then they did do a communication portion where they got those stakeholders they identified and the team they identified in the preparation step to be able to let them know what was going on. And then finally, they did their eradication of the malware. And then here's the list of the resources that I found. So these are the two that I was using for the playbook templates. IncidentResponse.com has a very good selection of playbooks. I think they have around 12 of them, which is adequate enough for you guys. They have PDFs and Visios, so you can download them and edit them as you like. The second one, that was the first template that I showed you with the decision tree breakdown. And then there's some more incident response resources. Eliason, you may know them from Confluence and Jira. They actually have a incident management playbook that they have shared with everyone, their incident response management policy, and also they have run books and other type of playbooks. It was very in-depth. And then the last one just describes the how to write an incident response playbook. And here's my contact information if you want to follow me on Twitter. I do have personal Twitter and a business Twitter for my company Visual Torch. It is a cybersecurity consulting firm. And then I am a part of a podcast called Pardon the Penetration with my friend Jordan, where we go over security topics if you guys want to follow along. And I will open up the floor for any questions. If you are in the BIC Slack, you can put in questions in there as well.
If you are on YouTube, there are still you can post a comment. We're watching that as well to see if there are any questions. So thanks. Thanks, Trenton. Appreciate it. We do have one question. Which playbook did you find most useful?
The one I found most useful was one from IncidentResponse.com. It had a lot more steps in there for me. and I was able to cross-reference that with other resources I found when I was researching each step.
Awesome. All right, well, I don't see any more. We'll continue to monitor the chat as well as the BIC. So thank you much. So next we'll move to Chloe Burton. Oh, one question before you go. Are you going to post the slides anywhere? Is there a place you're going to get this that we could that people can get the slides?
I haven't thought about that yet, but as soon as I figure out where to post them at, I'll let you guys know.
Another one, can this be used in healthcare?
Yes, it can be used anywhere you want it to be used at, and your incident response playbook doesn't even have to be really technical as far as information security is concerned. It can be for any type of event going on in your organization.
Good deal. All right. Just checking. Okay. All right. Thanks. Well, Trenton, as soon as you, if you figure out something before the end of the conference, I'll make sure we announce it. Other than that, I will we'll move on. So Chloe Burton is up next. She's going to talk about Splunk, the gateway tool, I guess, to basically get us into information security. So Chloe, I will let you take it away.
Thank you, Craig. Okay. Can everyone see my screen okay? Is it good? So, hello, everyone. I'm Chloe Burton. Thank you for joining me today. I'm excited to be here and talk to you guys about Splunk and my career journey.
Chloe?
So, yes.
Your presentation is on your iPhones?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No.
Okay, I'm just making sure. Okay.
No.
Okay.
iPhone. Yeah. So thanks, Andra. That's actually a good segue into this. So, I want you guys to take a look at your phones for a moment. Some of you might have iPhones. Some of you, unfortunately, might have Androids. I just want you to take a look at them right now and look and see, the progression from back in, which you can see on the screen, 2007 until now in 2021, how these phones have developed and, gone through an iterative process of being updated and upgraded. That software, the hardware, everything has, a progression of getting better. So that's here on the screen, what I'm just trying to show you, right? I don't know if you guys remember back in 2007 when iPhone 1 came out. I do, I got one, and I've had probably every one since, right? And each one has more features and more fun things to do, and the hardware is better. So just like that, I compare it to my career journey in tech and cybersecurity. And along the way, I have used a tool called Splunk. So today, that is what I'm going to talk to you about, Splunk, the gateway tool. So I'm sure a lot of you are curious to know, what is Splunk? It's a pretty interesting word. So in a nutshell, Splunk is an operational intelligence tool. It can gather any type of machine data from any type of device, and it'll aggregate that data. And then the user can come in and they can correlate that data, they can manipulate the data, and then they can view that data on a single pane of glass. Splunk is used across all industries and across all use cases. In particular, IT operations, user behavior analytics, and my personal favorite, security operations. So this tool has been with me hand in hand since I started my career, about 5-6 years ago. So I just want you all to understand that parallel, and as Splunk has improved, I have improved through my career as well. So all good software, hardware, anything that you're creating has the planning and design phase. So for me, that was starting in college. Yes, I went to the University of Pittsburgh. Yes, it's the best school ever. Yes, I played rugby, and yes, I was awesome. Any questions, we can talk about it later. But fast forwarding through my journey there, my 4 years, I had aspirations of being a doctor, a neurosurgeon. But when you fail intro to neuroscience 2 times, those plans get derailed. So I decided to study psychology. No knock on psychology majors. It was the best decision I made and has helped me throughout my career. So after college, I stayed in the psych field for a while. I worked with children with autism and other developmental and mental disorders. I really enjoyed the cause, helping children and adolescents out, but the stress was just too high and the pay wasn't adequate enough to accommodate for all that stress. So I decided to leave Pittsburgh and I moved home and I lived with my dad. While I was at home in Virginia, I did continue to do some of that psychology field work, but again, it just became too stressful. So one day I was on my dad's balcony and we were just, having a couple beers, having a talk after work. And he said to me, do you want to make a change? And I said, well, yeah. So he stared at me, just stared me in the eyes and he said, come over to the dark side. I said, okay. So there it was. My dad became my new product manager. He was hired right on site. And from there, my IT career took off. So working alongside my father, obviously we have to go into that testing phase, right? Preparing to get into, those first releases, that first version of my career. So again, with his help, I got a job at a small tech firm in the Northern Virginia area. I was a financial management analyst doing help desk work for 2 government agencies in the DC area. So while I was there, answering phone calls, taking email requests, making sure that the user had everything they needed, and then also working with the developers to improve the software that we were providing for the client. While I was doing this, my product manager, also known as my dad, he stressed to me the importance of working to be on site with the client and making sure I built those relationships and networked. So I did just that. I worked my way to be on site with the client, and there I was able to, be face to face, show them, who I was, as a person, right? So, this part of my career to me is in the resemblance to, when Apple has those really fun, events and they're like, okay, the next big phone or watch is coming out, that pre-release, this was me showing, my clients and the tech world that I'm coming and I'm here. Unfortunately, the company that I was working for went bankrupt. Unfortunate for them, but fortunate for me because Booz Allen Hamilton acquired them. So I worked at Booz Allen Hamilton for a little under a year. And then from there, I transferred over to the Big Four consulting firms. And for me in particular, it was Deloitte. And this, in my opinion, was going to be my first version release. This was, Chloe's career in tech. It was coming out, right? The world's gonna see. So here I am, Big Four life. I'm doing consulting. I had a lot of imposter syndrome. I really didn't know what I was doing. I was learning a lot on the fly. But during one of my engagements, I was, very fortunate to be able to work with a great team, and we were helping a client create policies, procedures, standards for their environment based on the NIST 853 controls. For you all that aren't aware, NIST 853 is a set of controls essentially that government agencies need to abide by in order to secure their environments. So doing that, the client got word of a hot tool on the market, also known as Splunk. And for me, this was also my first exposure. Unfortunately, at that time, in version 1, Chloe was not the tech person, the other individual on my team was. So he was asked to go to a week-long training. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to go. I'm still not sure why, but I went in his place. And that is when I was immersed in a week-long training with Splunk. So while I was there, I learned all the basics of Splunk, right? Not only that, I learned, other tech basics. So I was able to get onto the Linux command line, Windows command line, use different commands to go through it. SSH into an environment, understanding how to move through file systems. With Splunk on the front end, they have dashboards that use XML and HTML, and I was able to gather all that data in. And on top of that, I was starting to understand software architecture and networks. So all the building blocks of technology. It was a great experience. And from there, things just took off. So I decided, okay, we're in version 1. Let's see what's coming next. Let's go for a half release version. So version 1.5, I continued to expand my knowledge while I was at Deloitte. I worked on multiple engagements. I started to get certifications. I became a Splunk user, a Splunk administrator. I was one of our Splunk administrators internally at the firm. I was doing more advanced dashboarding and reporting, and I was working across multiple public and private sector clients. So I was working very, very hard. So after this, I was like, okay, you've acquired all of this information from, your pre-release, your testing, version 1, 1.5, what's next? I decided, okay, I'm ready to do another release. This time we're gonna do a full release and we're gonna go to version 2. So in 2018, I accepted an offer from Accenture, and there I became a Splunk security consultant. Everything that I had really been working for, right? Except this time, I was able to couple that security knowledge and the tool knowledge from Splunk together in order to help clients. This is really where I began to become that cybersecurity individual. I acquired my Splunk architect certification, and I started to work on engagements that were really security focused. I was starting to understand different frameworks and how adversaries worked and how I could use my Splunk knowledge and take the data that clients had on all the machines and help them understand what's in their environment. So I was really that cybersecurity analytics consultant. And I'm sure my family and my friends think this is what I do, sit at a computer and hack and fix the Wi-Fi when it's down, but it's not. Like I said, I'm really just here helping clients understand their environments. So fast forwarding to present day in the current release, in 2020, I was promoted to a manager at the firm. So that really just means that I started to build teams, right? I was teaching and learning at the same time. And with that, Splunk was continuing to grow as well. Splunk released enterprise security, Splunk cloud. When I started, these were things that Splunk didn't fully offer. They just had a Splunk core. So with these additional tools, that also meant that I had to additionally up my knowledge. So I learned more about enterprise security. I learned more about the cloud. So now that I understand Amazon Web Services and Azure and Google Cloud and how those interact. And as we continue into, the 2021, 2022, and the cloud becomes more popular and security around that becomes more important, I've been able to tune my skills accordingly. On top of that, I've been learning more about MITRE ATT&CK framework, NIST cybersecurity framework, cyber kill chain, all of those things around security. Making sure, again, that when adversaries change their tactics, their techniques, their procedures, that we as consultants are making sure that we're helping our clients understand that they have to adjust to that as well. So the next release, it is in production, pending right now, under testing, version 4. You'll have to stay tuned, definitely reach out and I'll let you know how that goes. But for now, in preparation for the next release, I'm continuing to develop and build strong teams. I'm taking on new roles right now. And at the firm, I'm working directly with Splunk to partner to provide these quality products and services to, again, ensure our clients are safe and secure. And then tailoring my security skill set, just making sure, again, that I'm always one step ahead of the adversaries. So I want to leave you all with just a quick note. So again, through this entire process, right, there's always a step up, the next place to go, just like any great software or hardware. So I might not have come from a traditional background, but that doesn't mean that I can't continue to grow and learn. And I think I want to let everyone know, especially as young Black professionals, whether you're in cyber or any other career, that you continue to progress, you continue to grow, and your end product will be great for all of your users. Thank you. And questions, the big Slack. You can find me on LinkedIn. I don't have any Twitter, Instagram, but definitely LinkedIn, reach out.
Awesome, thank you, Chloe. I'm watching the YouTube as well. So we'll give it a few seconds to see if anyone has any questions. So again, if if you have somewhere where you can post up the slides, maybe we'll find somewhere in general for all the slides from the development program. That's awesome. So that is an awesome way to just describe your journey through information security and just growing and becoming better. And those lessons that you learned apply to everybody, right? Whatever you're doing in security, really just and how Chloe has grown, that's what we all should be aspiring to, looking for that next step, that next skill set, and growing that way. So awesome. Thank you so much for that. So next we have Nicole Thomas, who's up, and she's going to talk about protecting your organization from insider threats. This topic comes up and fades in the public eye, but it's something that never goes away in regards to just making sure that we as security and we as network defenders should always be ready, should always be on the watch for. So without further ado, then I present Nicole Thomas.
Sorry, I was on mute. Good morning, guys. I'm Nicole Thomas. I'm going to be discussing protecting your organization's network from insider threats. So my background is I have probably about more than 15 years of experience as a DoD civilian and a military reservist in the DoD area, information technology and tactical communication networks. This is my first public speaking engagement. So I started this off with the best defense is a good offense. And the reason I say the best defense is a good offense is the best way to protect your network is to be proactive and to do the things in the beginning. Don't wait until your network is being attacked before you try to put an insider management program together. So in the introduction, so the reason I wrote this is because the pandemic has come through and everybody's teleworking and we have all of these new things that have come into place that we need to think about with everybody working from home. And so I just thought like, okay, what can we do to prevent insider threats since people are not in the office and they don't have their IT people right there to go ask these questions. So that's how I kind of came up with this idea to do this talk. So the first thing is you want to define the insight. What is the insider risk landscape? What does this look like? What is an insider threat? So who is an insider? So an insider is somebody that works within your organization or who used to work within your organization and has access to your organization's assets, information, or people. So you have different types of insider risks. You have espionage, fraud, loss of business assets, sabotage, and physical violence. So the elements of a risk management program, you want to deal with governance, policies and procedures, you want to do a risk analysis, and you want to build training and awareness for your users so that they can be educated on how to help protect the network. And the key points to remember is that an effective risk management program identifies and addresses risk early. Like that is one of the most important parts of this program, is identifying and addressing this stuff before it becomes a problem. You want to be proactive, not reactive. So in governance, you want to establish a program with a scope and goals that meet your organization's culture. You want to identify a program owner, and you want to identify stakeholders to help support you in this program. And my background in doing this is I was the information assurance officer on my last deployment, and I had to go to all of the FOBs throughout Iraq and do IA inspections and site-assisted visits in order to assist the FOBs in combating the issues that we had on our government networks. So with the policies and procedures, you want to set policies and procedures that set the direction of your organization's insider management program and is consistent with your organization's culture. So in the military, our policies and procedures are regulations that are pushed down from higher. And that's what I use to guide our program. And that's what I use to educate our soldiers on what they needed to do in order to protect our information while we were in country. So what I did is I put a brief together, and I went out and I pointed out to them all of the things that they signed. Like you signed a AUP when you access a government network. There's a banner. And I just made the soldiers aware that, hey, this is what's in place to protect our network. So you kind of need to be aware of this stuff. So the next thing is a risk analysis. So you want to identify your key insider risk. You want to identify the relevant risk, and you want to look at your user population, the role, access, and the behaviors, and you want to address those identified risks. So what I did is I went to the next higher command and I asked them, hey, what are the issues that you are having within country now with the users in Iraq and, information security? So they said some of the issues, sorry about that. So some of the issues that we had was cross-contamination with soldiers not understanding the different classification levels. So what I did is I put a slide together and I added it to my information assurance brief in order to educate the soldiers on how to identify the different classes of information that they're going to be dealing with while they're in country. So the next step is training and awareness. And I kind of touched on the training and awareness part already when because my training and awareness program that I built was the site assisted visits, the information assurance inspections, and the briefings that I had given the soldiers when I got to the FOB. And once I gave them the brief, we went through, did an inspection, and then I pointed out things to them that should be corrected. And that was my way of training them while they were in country. And the most important thing I think you should take away from the training and awareness is to make sure that it's innovative, interactive, and it's engaging, because you want to ensure that the users are understanding what you're putting out and they're paying attention. Because if they're not paying attention, then you kind of just wasted your time, building this program and trying to make it successful. So in conclusion, just to wrap all of this stuff up, the most important aspect of creating your insider threat management program is to ensure that you're catering your program to the organization and you have full management support as well as stakeholder involvement. So you want to make sure that you're including the other stakeholders within your organization with this plan, and you want to make sure that management is supporting you, because if you don't have management support, you're not really going to be successful. And so that is my presentation for today. Thank you guys for your time and for listening. And if you have any questions, you can drop the questions into the BIC Slack, and then I can answer them.
Right. We're also, just as a reminder, we are paying attention to the chat on YouTube. So we did have a question regarding the risk landscape. Does that fit inside of the AMITT framework?
I do not know the answer to that, but I can research it. I mean, okay, when you asked about the IAM-ITT framework, I'm not sure what that is referencing.
Okay. Well, we can. I can reach out to. I know Stephen. I'll reach out to him and see if I can get some clarification.
Yeah, if you get some clarification, because basically how I built our program was just the regulations that we had in country for the Army, and then also having a discussion with higher information assurance professionals to see what were the biggest issues and what I needed to educate our users on. And that's what I focused on. That's how I created our program. And it was pretty successful while I was there. So
awesome. Well, thank you. Appreciate that, Nicole. Thank you so much. While we get ready to switch, Ruth Antange is up next. But I did have a follow-up question for Chloe, someone asked, have you found that your psychology training helped you with your experiences in computer science or specifically cybersecurity?
Yes, in a way. I think more when it comes to the people, right? Being able to relate and understand people, because again, I don't come from that traditional cyber background, but once you relate to people and they open up to you and understand their concerns and their issues, you diagnose that and you go back and you fix it. So in that sense, yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you much. All right. So Ruth and Tanj, and I apologize if I—
Hold on, we have a question for Nicole.
Oh, you do? All right, great.
Yeah. Actually, we have two questions.
All right.
From YouTube. User behavior analytics can often assist with detecting insider threats on the network. Have you worked with any service providers in this arena?
So I'm speaking from a military background, DoD. So I have not. When I was in country, I didn't. Everybody that I worked with was internal stakeholders. So I don't know about any commercial. If you're asking me, commercial people that we worked with. Everything was done, within a military environment with the higher commands and the users. So there's really no outside, I didn't use any outside resources to kind of put together the program that I pushed out to.
Okay. And one more, has your military experience affected your military program creation?
It did. I mean, so if you're asking me, my military experience, did it assist me in building the IA program in Iraq? It did. It did. I mean, by me having the years of experience that I had, assisted me in understanding how to put the program together and how to address the soldiers, to kind of get them engaged and get them to understand, the importance of why we're doing this and why they should assist me in, trying to mitigate any issues.
Got it. Thank you so much. Great talk.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Nicole, when you get a chance, go ahead. I put in on the chat the expansion on AMITT, and we can come back for that if you have any other insight on that question later. So with that, Ruth, you're up, and you're going to talk about the importance of the right standards in cybersecurity and hopefully explain why you have quotes around that word right. So go ahead, Ruth, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Can you all see my screen?
Yep, we can see it.
So thank you. So Today I'll be talking on the importance of right standards in cybersecurity. So, oh, where is my page? Sorry for that. So a little about me. I am Ruth Atonge. I'm a recent graduate in engineering of complex systems. Someone who is so passionate about system safety and security, and also a food and dog lover. So that's a little about me. So my talk is actually structured in the form of an introduction, then I'll talk of the goal of cybersecurity standards, why they are important, some examples of cybersecurity standards, and some struggles people might face in the choice of a cybersecurity standard, and tips which could be of help in your choosing a cybersecurity standard. Then I'll later on wrap up with a little conclusion. So there's actually this quote from Tai Chi, which I find quite true and I can relate to. Apart from that, Tai Chi was a great guy. He was actually a Japanese industrial engineer who actually revolutionized the Toyota production system. So he was quite great in that. And he said, without standards, there can be no improvements. And that's why we actually have standards in different areas. Like we can talk of quality, environment, food, and all these standards are actually there as a guidance and also for improvement. Nevertheless, I'll be talking more on cybersecurity standards today. And so, how do people perceive the word standards? What do they think standards are? To me, a standard is simply a document, a formal document, which could be technical or not, which is actually designed to be used as a rule, a guideline, or a definition in a particular setting. To me, that's basically it. So what then is a cybersecurity standard? Simply put, a cybersecurity standard is actually a set of best practices or techniques put forth by experts to help protect against cyber attacks. That's basically in simple terms. So the goal of cybersecurity standards, their goal here is actually to help organizations, better still companies, from the definition to better help protect them against cyber attacks. That's better help protect themselves or the products or services or systems they produce against cyber attacks. So that's literally the aim of cybersecurity standards. Actually using an appropriate cybersecurity standard is quite important. And that's because firstly, there's the aspect of improved customer trust. Like companies which actually take cybersecurity seriously by following appropriate cybersecurity standards tend to garner trust from their customers. And that's actually because these customers are convinced that these companies are actually taking rigorous approaches towards security risk management, And secondly, there's the aspect of competition superiority. Like companies, organizations which follow appropriate cybersecurity standards actually have an upper hand in the market that's over their competitors. And that's because nowadays most customers, I'll say clients, tend to evaluate the security of their products or services based on standard compliancy. And thirdly, there's the aspect of compliance requirements, like following an appropriate cybersecurity standards actually helps in meeting up with, let's say, compliance requirements put forth by bodies such like regulatory bodies or legal bodies. So it actually helps meeting up with these compliance requirements with ease and less trouble. There's also the aspect of improved reliability. And that's because these cybersecurity standards actually ensure that appropriate security controls or procedures or processes are actually put in place in order to attain the CIA security goals. That's the confidentiality, integrity, availability goals. So meeting up with these goals in turn improves or enhances the reliability and security of the products, services, or systems in place. Then there's this aspect of increased profits in the sense that, sorry, in the sense that if your system or your product has enhanced reliability or security, this in turn proves that you have like minimum breakdowns or interruptions in your products or services. So you will get to avoid things like patches or fixes, which could have been costly. So it actually increases the profits of these companies. There are quite a number of cybersecurity standards out there. For example, in the railway sector, you have cybersecurity standards such as the IC 62443, the EN 5701. Same as the automotive sector, you have standards like the ISO 21434. And what's important to note here is that all these standards are quite intrinsic to their sectors. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that, for example, you can't use the standards like the UL 2900. You can't actually say you're using it for the automotive sector. Yes, they're actually cybersecurity standards, but all these sectors have their own problems or threats which are intrinsic to them. There's actually the struggle, or better still, there's some struggles you might face while trying to choose cyber security standards for your product or system you're trying to build. And that's because you bear witness with me that the rate of complexity in systems is quite growing at an exponential rate. Like the systems we have today aren't actually like the same as those like, let's say, 25 years ago or 30 years ago, even though by that time I wasn't born, but I know they aren't the same. So and this is due to like their hybrid natures. So sometimes there's this struggle on which cybersecurity standard I could use or things like that. So there are actually tips I read up which could help while you as a person or company you're trying to like choose an appropriate cybersecurity standard for the products you're trying to build or system or service, depending on how you want to call it. So the first is on customer preference. A moment of truth here, like all these companies are trying to build products which in turn are to be sold to people, to customers, to clients. So the first question you should be asking yourself as a company should be, is my client or is my customer trying to test to certain cybersecurity standards? And if the answer is yes, then that makes life easy for you. Like things will get so fast there, since you'll be trying to work with the cybersecurity standard preference of your customer. Nevertheless, if the answer is no, then you should be doing a market research. on which standards are being used for such a product. Like, you don't want to be giving your competitors an upper hand, So literally, you need to do a market research to see which cybersecurity standards are being used for such products. So the next is, if you're the answer to the first two previous points are no's, that is, in order, better still, the product you're trying to come up with is more of an inventive one than an innovative one. Then your research team should be thinking on trying different standards to see which one works best for your product, So that's where the brainstorming comes in. So as conclusion, yeah, these cybersecurity standards are there to help, or better still, improve, as Daichi said, the security of our systems, our product services. Nevertheless, the aspect of choosing an appropriate cybersecurity standard is just as important as following one. So that's basically it. And thank you for listening. And if you do have other questions, please do put them in the big Slack channel and I'll answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Awesome presentation. The BICs, and I, as always, just remind that we are monitoring the YouTube chat as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them there also. So awesome presentation. Standards are one of those things that are both that, as if you've done any time in cybersecurity, you know that it is both a benefit and a frustration to deal with standards. So, so thank you much for that. So we did get I'm going to read this response. Well, we did get an answer, Nikki, on the response for the AMITT question. So, Nikki, do you want to speak to that, please? You can just read what you wrote, which is a great answer.
Okay, so I didn't use AMITT. I pretty much focused on the basics of information security and the major issues that we were seeing in country, which were cross-domain violations and negligent discharge of classified information. And that was our biggest issues. So my focus was just educating the soldiers on the AUP that they signed, as well as the higher commands regulations that governed the information security while we were in country. I wish I had the opportunity to, to do a deep dive into information security like the AMITT, because that would have been amazing. But I was the Essex NCOIC, so my main goal was just to assist the command in reducing the CDVs and the NDCIs that we had, because it was a huge issue when we were in country. Just right. Making sure that the soldiers understood the severity of, information being lost while we were in country.
Awesome, thanks. Appreciate that. Let's see, popped up here. Another question, to Ruth, what standards can provide a good start to a small and medium company or medium company?
Thanks for your question. It actually depends on what your product is, or it depends on the domain in which you are. As I said, there are actually different standards for different domains, different cybersecurity standards for different domains. Nevertheless, it's true, like some of these cybersecurity standards are costly. So sometimes you see these medium or small enterprises going in for mostly the NIST, because it's quite free. Like what I studied was mostly the NIST, maybe for example, the NIST SP 800-160 volume 1, or other NIST standards, since they are free and quite open enough and not so much strict.
Awesome. Thank you. So let's see. I think that's it. Any other questions? Checking around. If not, feel free to post them up. We'll circle back. We've been able to do that. Really appreciate the speakers for answering questions even several minutes after they finish. So with that, next up we have Stephen, who's going to talk about cloud security, just the basics. So this is a very relevant topic as we shift more and more to cloud, as more and more hybrid cloud organizations are, more and more organizations are even in a hybrid mode as they're just testing out what's going on. So Stephen, I'm going to let you take it, and look forward to hearing what you've got to tell us about cloud security and what we need to do as far as a basic setup.
Everybody see my screen okay?
Yep.
Cool. Good morning, everybody. My name is Stephen Adebenle, or Stephen A for short, and I will be doing this talk on Cloud Security 101, Understanding the Basics. So a little bit about me. I'm a senior cloud security consultant at Scalable Security, or ScaleSec. I am located in San Diego, California. I'm a lifetime student to IT, husband, father, brother, and uncle. I enjoy helping people make or build guardrails instead of roadblocks. You can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter, which I recently signed up for. So what is cloud security? At a high level, cloud security is basically protecting your applications and workloads in the cloud. So that can be the public cloud, the private cloud, or a combination of the two. It's basically preventing both external and insider threats from compromising the data that you have hosted in the cloud. So cloud security involves a lot of compliance, data privacy, regulatory requirements to ensure that you are basically keeping the information both confidential, making sure the integrity is intact, and making sure it's constantly available. There's different best practices that you can apply when you talk about cloud security, which I will get into later in the talk. So when you look at cloud security and you compare it to your traditional on-prem environment, so when you talk about the cloud, you're basically abstracting the resources that you have from a physical data center and basically renting those resources somewhere that you don't have control over. So from a cloud security perspective, you are responsible for, well, the cloud service provider is actually responsible for all the infrastructure that they provide you. And you as the consumer are responsible for sharing that responsibility of securing that infrastructure. So that would be like having security groups or NACLs in your cloud to prevent network breaches. Whereas in an on-prem data center, you basically have the enterprise that's responsible for the entire scope of security. So they build all the different security policies and procedures that go into securing that data center. From a connectivity standpoint and a cloud security model, everything is sort of API driven. So you're using application interfaces to connect to your different workloads in the cloud. Whereas with the on-prem security model, basically all of that work is handled using different security tooling. So like Chloe mentioned earlier, you can use Splunk to basically filter or get logging for your infrastructure in your on-prem data center. And then in terms of resources, you have in the cloud both immutable and dynamic resources. So what that means is you'll have no limitations on the amount of resources that you need in the cloud. So you can scale up or down as you need, and your both CapEx and OpEx costs are variable depending on how you scale your resources. Whereas on-prem, you sort of have to put a initial investment, upfront investment for the resources that you provide in your on-prem environment. And they sort of are static and grow over time. Whereas in the cloud, again, you can grow, you can scale up or down as you need. So when we talk about cloud security challenges, you have to put into context the different types of environments that you have in the cloud. So your public cloud is basically the three main players, which is Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, and Microsoft Azure. So basically, those are cloud service providers that provide you access to infrastructure, different security tools, and other resources to be able to stand up workloads in the cloud. Then you have your private cloud, which is the new form of your on-prem data center, where basically you are managing end-to-end the entire aspect of your infrastructure and security related to that infrastructure. So in your private cloud, you have to stand up and secure all of the servers and infrastructure needed to host the data or workload in the cloud, and you have more control of how the security is defined. With a hybrid cloud, basically, it's a mix of public and private cloud. So you take the different capabilities that you have deployed in your public cloud and connect it to resources that you have in your private cloud, which for compliance or regulatory reasons need to stay on-prem. So just establishing that connectivity between the private and public cloud gives you a hybrid cloud. So when we look at cloud security, there are some different risks that you need to think about as you migrate workloads to the cloud or take this journey to the cloud. One of those risks include the abuse and misuse of cloud resources, because everybody thinks, okay, yes, because of all the great benefits that you get from migrating workloads to the cloud, let me just do a quick lift and shift of my workloads and drop them in the cloud and I should be good to go. And basically, that's not a good approach when you think about deploying workloads to the cloud, because the infrastructure is so cheap. You can have a lot of misconfigurations applied to your cloud environment. Another risk when it comes to cloud security is insecure APIs. So there are a lot of scenarios where developers deploy applications on non-secure APIs, because again, there's this mindset of whoever gets to the market first is going to basically be king at that particular time. So let's deploy fast and let's fail fast and deploy hard, basically ensuring that you get to the market quickly and swiftly. But again, insecure APIs leads to breaches and gives attackers a entry point to basically attack you. Another cloud security risk is compliance gaps. So depending on the type of industry, you will have scenarios where you have to facilitate certain regulatory and compliance requirements. And due to a lack of visibility into the cloud service provider's environment, you're sort of assuming that once you deploy your workload into the cloud, that it meets certain compliance requirements based on the compliance that the cloud service provider has given you. But what you need to understand is you need to incorporate additional compliance checks as you deploy your workloads to the cloud. So you have to be mindful of the compliance requirements that your applications or workloads must adhere to when deploying workloads in the cloud. Another big security risk in cloud security is data loss or loss of data. Basically, that is when you sort of create these scenarios where you throw, for example, data in a public S3 bucket, basically allowing that data to be visible to anybody in the world and causing attackers to exfiltrate your data because that data is just loose out there in the wild. So a good practice is to always have non-public buckets in the cloud so that the entire world doesn't have access to that data, whether it's confidential or not. Another big thing that we saw over the last couple of years are data breaches, because again, the way enterprises choose to secure their data in the cloud is not consistent with some of the enterprise standards or corporate policies that these enterprises have in place. So we've seen a lot of situations where companies are getting hacked because they have mismanaged how their data is used in the cloud. And that is a result of poor identity and access management. So IAM is definitely a big thing in the cloud. If you do not have a thorough understanding of IAM, that can lead to a lot of different problems. IAM is basically, in my opinion, the root of a good security foundation in the cloud. So having a poor IAM strategy is definitely going to have a ripple effect on how your data and workloads operate in the cloud. So from a best practices point of view, basically what you want to do is start with a good IAM strategy. Make sure you have the basic foundational knowledge for whatever cloud platform you're using when it comes to IAM, because you want to ensure that the permissions that are granted to your workloads are least privileged. So you only give your workloads or applications the permissions necessary to perform that specific function and nothing else. You also want to make sure your team is trained and has a good understanding of how to use the specific platform which they're deploying resources to, because if you don't have a good understanding of that platform, then it makes it harder to manage it down the line. You also want to incorporate and implement good cloud security practices by defining what acceptable use is in the cloud and making sure your applications and processes adhere to those policies. Another best practice with cloud security is network segmentation. So in AWS, for example, they have this concept called VPC, which is virtual private cloud, and that allows you to define a software-defined network where you can essentially control the flow of traffic within that specific VPC. And you also have regions and subnets which you define in your VPC. So making sure you have proper network segmentation is definitely key to securing your workloads in the cloud. Endpoint security is definitely another big thing. With the rise of cloud comes how do I now monitor and maintain the different VMs I have in the cloud? Because a lot of cloud service providers provide you with a base VM, which you now need to harden to, again, meet compliance and regulatory requirements. So what type of security can I install or deploy on my VM to ensure that I am secure at all times? With data encryption, you have three different points of view. So you have encryption in transit, encryption at rest, and encryption in use. You basically want to make sure your data is secure end to end so that there is no peeping toms anyway at any point through the process when the data is moving. And you want to also ensure that you have a good disaster recovery plan for your cloud workloads, because there'll be scenarios where a system or application will fail. So how you recover from that is definitely key to ensuring that your applications and workloads are secure in the cloud. You also want to make sure that you are, again, adhering to compliance and constantly auditing your systems to make sure that you comply with all the regulations for the specific industry that you're working in. That pretty much wraps up my talk. Hopefully I didn't bore you and you learned a little bit about cloud security. And now I will open the floor for questions.
So I got one question from BIC Conference. What's a common mistake that businesses make when they move to a cloud architecture that you've seen? What's one of the most common mistakes you've seen?
Misconfiguration with IAM. So everybody basically thinks that IAM is sort of like your Active Directory. So you basically deploy your workload into the cloud and give everybody administrative privileges because that's what you were doing on-prem and it's easy, instead of provisioning roles and granting users access to the appropriate roles. So yeah, misconfiguration of IAM. If you look at a lot of the breaches that have happened over the years, it was a result of IAM misconfiguration along with other things.
Awesome, thank you much. Let's see, looking at the, so we do have a question. Just could you briefly talk about what IAM is? And then can you differentiate between IAM and where does AD or Active Directory fit into that?
So IAM is basically your identity and access management within a cloud ecosystem. It controls what you are allowed to do, and yeah, it controls the permissions that you have within your cloud environment. So for example, within the context of AWS, IAM, you have three categories. You have a user, you have a role, and you have a group. So as an IAM user, I can give myself permissions, administrative permissions, to basically do anything I want within the cloud environment, or I can scope down my permissions to only do my job function. And then when you're talking about IAM in comparison to AD, so AD is more of a service provider when you want to connect to IAM in the cloud. You basically use Active Directory to set up single sign-on to give you access to your cloud environment. But IAM is what controls what you can do within a cloud environment.
Okay, awesome. Thank you much, Stephen. Just checking to see if we have any other questions. Oh, I do have, do you prefer on-prem over cloud or vice versa, and why?
Cloud, like once upon a time, as when I started my IT career, on-prem sounded like the greatest thing in the world. But then with the invention of cloud, like again, it's a no-brainer because you have access to resources within milliseconds. Whereas with on-prem, it takes days, if not months, to get resources deployed, depending on the enterprise that you're in. But you can spin up a web application in less than an hour in the cloud, whereas that might take you a couple of hours or even a couple of days on-prem.
Cool, awesome. All right, any other questions? Give it a couple seconds here. While we're doing that, the next speaker, while I wait to see if anything else shows up, the next speaker is Tina Honey, who is going to talk about leadership and talk about some of the things that she's learned about leadership. Another question coming in, what cloud provider provides, in your opinion, I guess, what cloud provider provides the best options, and can smaller cloud providers be trusted?
So that is a matter of, it depends on the use case, because each cloud provider has certain capabilities that will satisfy the use case that you need for based on your requirements. So it really depends on the use case. I mean, all three cloud providers are great. I mean, yes, AWS is the market leader, but again, it really depends on your use case and what you are trying to achieve in the cloud. And then in terms of small cloud providers, so again, it comes down to your use case and what you're trying to achieve in the cloud. Like, where are you going to get the best bang for your buck, really?
All right, so I've got a couple more questions, but I want to move on to the next one. So let's see, I've got at least two more. So I'm gonna have Stephen, I'm gonna have you answer those in Slack, and then I'll post them both in the Slack and on Google for that. So we're gonna move on to Tina and let her go, and we'll make sure we get those questions answered. Thank you much, Stephen. Great presentation. So Tina, you're up.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what side of the country that you're in. My name is Tina Honey, and today I'm going to talk to you about leadership is what you need. A little bit about me, I am a security analyst, and I am also about 2 months away from completing my doctoral degree in information security. So let's dig into leadership. First, let's look at some of the 10 biggest data breaches of all times. Yahoo, 3 billion records in 2013. Marriott, 500 million data records breached over a 4-year period, 2014 through 2018. And then 2021, we just started, and we have a number of breaches. In January, one of the biggest Internet of Things technology vendors, Ubiquita, alerted its customers of a data breach caused by unauthorized access to their database through a third-party cloud provider. Parler, we've all heard about Parler, a conservative social media app. It had its data hacked. 70 terabytes of leaked information, included 99.9% of posts, messages, videos, which contained metadata of date, time, and location. And to add insult to injury, Parler required for their users to validate their citizenship. So that meant they had to upload their driver's license or any type of government ID, which was also hacked and exposed. January also brought us data breaches of Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Memcast, Plexer, Mindful, Bonobos, VIP Games, and US Cellular. That was just in January. Let's move on to February. California DMV, they suffered a data breach after a billing contractor was hit by ransomware. The attack exposed drivers' personal information from the last 20 months of California's vehicle registration records. That included names, addresses, license plates, and vehicle VIN numbers. So just think all of your information is sitting at your state's DMV. Additional breaches for February was Nebraska Medicine, Kroger, and T-Mobile. We're just 6 days into the month of March, and already we've had another social media platform that's similar to Parler, Gabe. And right now, the data is still out. It's an undisclosed number of passwords and private communications that was stolen from their users. So you think, well, we have all these breaches. What is it financially costing us? Well, Gartner broke it down by market segment. And from 2017 through 2020, you can see the cost of what people are spending on technical controls. The spending is about 2.4% down. The spending is about 2.4% growth over the 2019 spending, but it is 8.7% down from the growth that Gartner predicted in 2019 spending. So we have things like the virus, which is driving a short-term demand in areas of cloud adoption, remote worker technologies, and cost-saving measures. Other items in segments of IT, we expect that the security will be negatively impacted by the COVID crisis. We have yet to see what 2021 brings and beyond. So we'll have to see when we move forward. So then it brings us to the next question. Do we have the right people in charge? Do Chief Information Security Officers have the correct training? We have certifications, I've listed some. We have executive leadership training from some of the top business schools in and out of the country. And many have education. They have MBAs, and they have masters in cybersecurity and doctorates. What should an effective cybersecurity leader look like? There's a list of items here, but a successful leader influences followers in a manner to achieve desired goals. What do practitioners say about leadership? Well, NIST defines a leader as an organization's effective executive leadership who's responsible for supervising and executing risk management and operations. Forbes define leadership as a process of social impact that boosts the endeavors of others toward the accomplishment of objectives. And lastly, ISACA. ISACA defines leadership as compassion, a person that's ethical, and a person that has a high risk appetite. So there's a number of leadership styles, as you see displayed here. Some additional ones that people may want to call out is servient, strategic, ethical, and as recent, situational leadership has been the talk of the town. But I'm going to bring you back to something that Burns, 1978, the founder of transformational leadership. This is a leadership style that he founded, and it's about a leadership approach that causes change in individuals and social systems. And as you see listed here displayed, these are some of the elements of transformational leadership. Now, I told you I'm working on my doctorate in information security. So of course, I would not move on with this presentation without saying, well, what does research say about transformational leadership? It enhances the execution of employees, energizes employees to work towards goals, and has a positive impact on the intentions of employees to adhere to information security policies. So how does cybersecurity transformational leadership solve the problem? Transformational leaders are visionaries, are strategists, and they empower their followers. How can you learn to become a cybersecurity transformational leader? Well, there are some key characteristics. One of the things being a tactical visionary, providing direction and alignment, and having the ability to motivate followers to the desired information security compliant culture, as well as we mentioned before, executive leadership training. You're learning from researchers and practitioners like myself, which leads me to America's Institute for Cybersecurity Leadership, where I teach a 2-day leadership workshop for executives and a niche programs for the next generation cybersecurity professional. As I close, I'd like to leave you with 3 things. Current CISOs are not typically trained to be effective leaders. Preliminary research is showing that transformational leadership may hold the key. And lastly, there are 3 traits to becoming a transformational leader. Thank you. If you have any questions, you can put them in the Slack.
Right, the Slack or the YouTube live chat, which I am definitely monitoring. And so awesome. Great presentation, Tina. The last year, as I've moved into a leadership role, those are just some great tips that I'm just looking forward to really being able to take and to put into practice. So, so thanks a lot. I see Stephen Pullum has some great tips as well, just added views. And so, but Tina, that was an awesome presentation. Thank you for that. So look forward to seeing some more results from your research and from your doctorate. So hopefully, when that happens, you broadcast it out and we'll celebrate that with you. I know that's a long program, so good job. Guys, this has been great. We got a couple more, so we're getting down to the bottom. I'm talking a little bit to make sure that if any questions come in, because there's a bit of a delay between what I'm seeing and what's on the Zoom. So I want to make sure that I wait a bit to see what that happens. So while I'm doing that, Brian Hardy, you can go ahead and get ready. You're picking a password manager. This is such a practical topic, because I remember when I used to, I know we shouldn't write passwords down, but I had a password book that I kept by my computer. And I remember finally saying, you know what, this is crazy, and just going to a password manager. So Brian, so Brian's got a great talk that I'm looking forward to hearing. So nothing yet for Tina, but we'll keep an eye out. And if anything does come up, we'll route it to her and let her answer the questions. In the meantime, Brian, you go ahead and jump in, and look forward to your talk.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that, Craig. As mentioned, Craig mentioned, actually, let me share my screen. Sorry, guys. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
All right, how about now?
Yep, we're good.
All right, so today I decided to do the topic on choosing a password manager. Some of the things you should consider by choosing your password manager for your organization or for yourself. Before we get into that, I wanted to give you a bit of statistics on password behaviors as at the moment. In 2019, 80% of hacking-related security breaches were leveraged by weak or stolen passwords. These passwords are usually passwords that doesn't follow our traditional guidelines of having long strings of characters, at least eight characters, having different types of characters, such as letters, numbers, special characters, and things of that nature. And oftentimes in these data breaches or these security breaches, rather, we noticed that a lot of these passwords was reused across multiple different accounts. In those 2019 as well, passwords was leaked in about 65% of all breaches, meaning that your passwords was exposed in some way and out in the out of those breaches, meaning that someone has those passwords, and we should definitely always try to change those passwords often. And about 65% of people reuse passwords for some or all of their accounts. Obviously, that's not ideal. And this is some of the reasons why we need better behavior when it comes down to storing our passwords and password hygiene. So this leads me to why we use password managers. And some of the reasons are they're convenient. You remember one password for multiple different sites. These sites, this is your master password, obviously, that allows you access to your password manager. We generate random passwords for you, and this is like instantaneously. So you can get passwords with those characters I mentioned earlier, where they're randomly generated. It helps us generate longer, more complex passwords. These passwords normally are more complex because you have longer strings of text, and you also have different characters. Password managers are obviously secure, and we'll get into that a little later about the security posture of most password managers, but for the most part, they are usually encrypted. And then password managers encourages good password hygiene. Again, as we said earlier, changing your password often, making sure you have long, complex passwords, and understanding the use of passwords are all great features of password managers. So the types of password managers that we have out are web-based. These are usually the browser-based password managers that usually ask you, do you want, I don't know, Firefox, maybe Chrome to save your password. They're not as secure as what I will mention later here is local or cloud-based password managers. However, they do get the job done as they store your passwords so you don't have to remember multiple passwords. And they help you generate new passwords as well. There's locally stored password managers. These password managers encrypt your password on a local basis, meaning it's stored on the computer, it's encrypted on the computer. If the computer you're using or device you're using is lost, stolen, or and otherwise unusable, then your password manager, if you don't, your password manager, your passwords are there with them, and those cannot be reused. You'll lose all your password basically. But this is a good option for most companies and people who reside on really one device. So they have there's a advantage of using locally stored passwords. Cloud-based password managers stores it on the cloud. These are easier for mobile users, as the devices covers multiple devices. So your password isn't just stored on one device. You can have these stored in multiple places, or at least one place. But as long as you know your password, your master password, you'll be able to have access to your password no matter where you go. So those are the advantages of cloud-based password managers. Encryption standards for password managers is basically, usually symmetric key exchange is involved. We want to use the most secure encryption as much as possible. So ideally, the password manager should use Advanced Encryption Standard, or AES 256. And ideally, we want to use our encryption standards. We want to use multiple layers of encryptions. Some of the features you should consider when deciding what password manager you want to use is multi-factor authentication is involved. Again, we're using our password across multiple, or at least we're using this password device or password manager or vault. We wanted to make it as hard as possible for an adversary to actually get to your actual passwords or even crack it. You want a policy developed or development for organizations. So basically you want to be able to control what policies you use. For example, you would like for the password manager to, require a stronger master password, for instance, or the ability to see if end users are reusing passwords, or if their passwords are in breaches. We also want to consider LDAP or Active Directory to manage the user base. If you get a large organization, it will make it easier for you to manage who has access to the password manager. Password sharing is also one of those things that you want to consider. Is how do the password manager make it safe for you to share your password if you're using shared accounts across your organization, and the best way to use those. You also want password. You also want password use notifications. So if the password manager notices that your password is being reused across different organizations or different accounts, you want it to give you a notification of that. And then breach password notifications, obviously, if your password has shown up in a breach, it would be a good idea to have that password manager notify you that that password has shown up in a breach. So in summary, some of the top priorities of a password manager should be the security should be definitely top priority. Understanding how they're using encryption and also how your data is shared or what happens if that company becomes breached. Do adversaries get access to your information? If so, is it encrypted enough for you to for them not to get any valuable information? And then you want the best solution that fits your organization. Again, like in the instance with shared pass or local or cloud-based passwords, you want to make sure that however you guys choose to use passwords, that you have the best solution that fits your organization needs. All right, and I want to open the floor for questions if anyone have any questions.
Awesome, Brian. Thanks for that. Monitoring for questions. Let's see. While I'm doing that, Tina, do you mind answering the couple questions verbally from the Slack BIC conferences? I can read them to you if you like.
Sorry, I was trying to get off mute.
Sure.
I was answering. So Nicole asked, what was I doing my dissertation on? I'm conducting a study on the leadership between leadership styles and the relationship between leadership styles that aid in creating an information security culture. So I don't know yet, still in the preliminary analysis. I just finished the survey, still in the preliminary analysis of which leadership style is gonna turn out, but I'm happy to share my results once all that comes to play. As far as, I think Denise was asking about the reference for the Transformational Leadership Quad. Again, I was gonna get her the exact location, but it's by Burns, 1978. He is the father of transformational leadership style approach. He's the one that started it. So I'll have to get you the exact location of that quad. And it was one other one, I gotta read it. I didn't get a chance to look at it, Craig.
Okay, well, while you do that, then Brian, I've got one. He says, in general, I guess our two-factor authentication methods better than passwords.
I think layers of security is good. So like, I wouldn't say one is better. I would definitely say with the password manager and two-factor, it's just making the adversary that much harder to get to, or at least your information that much harder to get to. At least that's my take on it.
Right. Awesome. Thank you, Brian.
And I have the answer to the other question that I saw. The question was, do you think that leaders should be groomed from the bottom up, or can they be transformed from top level executives? And the answer is actually both. They can be groomed as well as from the top level. There just needs to have the support. I mean, it's like anything else when you go to work and you have a person who was just, you know, I call them worker bees, that's what I call myself, but you get promoted into management. Well, a lot of times companies are no longer grooming their next staff to be leaders. It used to be that they would have a leadership program and you would go through that leadership program and that's how you would go through and being promoted. Now you were next in line and now you're the next leader, and not a whole lot of support and training for that.
Awesome. Thank you. And I think just real quick, your dissertation on leadership styles and which leadership style is best for security. I think there's a follow-up with that, you know, as far as just what really piqued your interest in that particular topic.
So because we have such horrible leadership, we have constant training and books and everything. And this is not just in information security, but across the board. We have such horrible leadership, although we have all these books and training. So as we start narrowing it down to information security, I start looking at all the breaches and everything that we talk about, and everything from information security thus far focuses on technical controls. But research shows us and supports that the insider threat is our biggest threat. And that's not being addressed because it's from a human perspective. And so you can have all these technical controls in place, yet we still have breaches, as I discussed in the first part of my presentation. So that's what got me interested, that we have to look at a more holistic picture. And we got to look beyond the technical controls, and we got to look at other pieces of this whole breach as we move forward to figure out how we can best curve the breach, because you're never going to eliminate it, but you could curve it.
Awesome, thank you. It's something else when something on one of your 5 computers and 3 devices dings and you have no idea where it is. Brian, one question for you. What password manager do you use and why did you choose it?
Good question.
You got to turn your video on too.
Okay. So good question. I don't want to share. So all right. I use 1Password at the moment. The reason why I use 1Password is because of its security standards of multiple encryptions, and the fact that it hasn't had any known exploits as of yet.
All right, awesome. Thank you much. Okay, so last talk. This has been great. And so Tyra Harrison's going to wrap us up, talking about where she's going to reflect on the ethics in technology. So awesome. This has been awesome. And Tyra, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, can everyone see the screen?
Yep, see your presentation, yep.
All right, so today I'm going to present a talk on the reflection of ethics in technology. And just a little bit of my background. So I just wrapped up my first year in the field, coming straight out of undergrad. I got my bachelor's from Bowie State University in computer technology. And I really came to this subject because in my age group, and myself included, I love social media. All my friends love social media. So I just kind of started to think of, what is that thing that keeps us scrolling for hours? What is that thing that just pulls us to these technologies? And that kind of led me to start reading about ethics and technology and how those two things intertwine. So this talk is going to present my thoughts on the possible reflection of ethics in technology. And I'm going to jump right into it. So most people see technology as something neutral. They see it as something that can't judge you, it can't have bias because it's not human. But the question is technology really understanding how we feel, or is it simulating an understanding with when it makes suggestions on what we should see and stuff like that? So the perspective today that I'm going to discuss is that of an engineer or a developer. So from that perspective, how are their ethics or values transferred into the work that they create? And can those values, have an impact on the people who use the things that they created? So artificial intelligence defined. At the most basic level, AI is a machine that has the ability to imitate human intelligence. So AI is not defined by a single sentence. It's actually an umbrella term, which has other things like machine learning, deep learning, neural networks, and more under it. So AI is just really the broad spectrum of a bunch of other things that happen related to it. And there are plenty more subcategories that aren't mentioned here. So the first, I'm going to break it down into 3 different types of AI. So the first type is a reactive machine. So reactive machines are the most basic forms of AI, and they're unable to recollect past events. So these machines, I like to use the example of playing a chess game online. So you're playing a chess game on your phone. The computer can only make decisions based on what the board looks like at its current turn. So the board's not going to say, that person, usually when we get to this point of the game, they might choose to do that. Or usually what that person does is this. They just go based on what players are on the board right there at that moment. And then each turn, it goes from that moment exactly. It doesn't have any past recollection. So in AI, representation is a term that is used to describe the world for that machine. So representation talks about how that machine views the world. And at this level, representation is just very basic. It's what's in front of that machine. The next type is limited memory. So these types of machines are actually able to look at the past and use their observations to make decisions. So the example that I use here is a self-driving car. A self-driving car has sensors. It can tell the speed limit. It knows when someone's crossing the street. It has a bunch of different things that it can collect data from to make a decision on whether to stop, move slower, or anything like that. Now, the difference here between a human and a self-driving car, and where we kind of see the level of AI, is that a human over 30 years can develop a sort of finesse when they're driving and, maybe learn how to drive while you're drinking your morning coffee. A machine like in limited memory cannot do this. So it doesn't grow better over time at the task, but it can take its observations to make decisions. The next type is theory of mind. So here's where you begin to draw the line between the technology that we have and the technology that you see in the movies and the sci-fi things and all that that we may have in the future. This is where the machines begin to build an understanding of what people and creatures feel and why they make certain decisions. So if you look at the picture here, what are you doing, Denzel? Playing with this. Something that applies the theory of mind would know that you can't just say I'm playing with this because the person on the phone doesn't know what you're doing and they don't see what you're doing. So here's where it kind of begins to develop some human features of saying, okay, this thing is not aware of that, so I'm going to react in this way. And ideally, AI at this level would be able to adjust its actions according to this understanding and read the room, if you will. Self-awareness. So here's where it kind of gets tricky. This is where engineers are actually building a consciousness into a machine. And at this level, the engineer must actually understand what consciousness is and how it works. A self-aware machine would have emotional intelligence, which is a principle that's very hard for humans alone to understand, let alone a machine. And it can also predict emotions, not necessarily accurate, but it can make inferences based on emotion. Now, we're not at this level yet, but like I said, technology moves at a very fast rate, and it's not necessarily irrelevant to talk about these things now. So before we get here, we need to fully understand human intelligence and why people do the things they do so that we can work on building machines that, do the correct thing and not just go off on bad terms. So here we're going to talk about the distribution of wealth. So as AI becomes more popular, the economy is definitely going to profit. We're going to have more product being pushed out and, at a lower cost. But what this also does is increase the wealth gap. So people lose their jobs, but big corporations still get to make their money. So this wealth gap is just expanding, which doesn't really help out those people who are stuck in the middle and who lost their jobs. And this can also contribute to the creation of a class system where we have people whose jobs may have been taken or who can't find jobs, and then you have the people who are benefiting from that production of AI. Developing AI. So some of the top coding languages that are used in AI are LISP, C++, Python, which is the very most popular, Java, and Prolog. So some of the things that kind of pull Python is more popular are the fact that it's simple to create AI models in Python, and it even has pre-built libraries, which are a group of models published by various sources. So Python is way more intuitive than the other languages that I mentioned, and it has a very easy to read syntax. So the fact that this language is the most popular and it's also the easiest to learn is something that you might want to think about as we think of how fast AI develops and who could be creating these things. Now, there are different types of bias when it comes to artificial intelligence, and it's broken down for now, I'm going to break it down into these two things. Cognitive bias, which is based on your feelings towards a group based on your perceived membership. So this is something that if you see something a certain way in your life, this bias you may not even realize that you have. And this can be subconsciously transferred into technology as an engineer. And this can also stem from having biased data, where artificial intelligence relies very heavily on data sets. If the data is biased, then the technology may not do what it needs to do ethically. Now, data bias is when the available data misrepresents the target population. So if we have a product that's meant to be used all around the world, but the data set that was used to create it and the data set that's being fed to that artificial intelligence only represents a small community of people, then this technology might not really work the way it's intended, and it might not work to the benefit of everyone who it's available to. Now, here's where we're going to go into defining ethics and how that kind of works into technology. So ethics are important for decision-making in group settings. This includes the investigation and analysis of moral principles and dilemmas. So will we ever be able to agree on a set of mandatory ethics for AI? How do we define standard ethics when it kind of depends on what's right and what's wrong? Versus morals, this is where you can see the lines being drawn. So ethics are a set of rules that define something that's allowed, whereas morals are driven by the desire to be good or do the right thing. This is like group versus self-focused. Morals kind of depend on your environment, how you grew up, but also are the basis of ethics. So that's a pretty controversial combination you have here, where you're building rules for what's right and wrong based on what you grew up knowing. So the New Jim Code is a term that comes from a book called The Race After Technology by Ruha Benjamin. And she defines this as the use of technology to promote ideas that seem like they would help out the community as a whole, but actually push discrimination and marginalization. So the New Jim Code is kind of a play on words, Jim Crow, which just shows how those similar principles are being applied in technology that we fought so hard to get rid of. And that's kind of shocking. So Jaron Lanier, this guy is a computer scientist and a philosopher. He's an early Silicon Valley pioneer. So he is someone who's kind of created the baseline for virtual reality. Him and Thomas Zimmerman founded the first company to ever sell virtual reality products. And he speaks out often on the dangers of technology and the dangers of social media. So I think it's really important to see what his views are, because he's someone who has created these technologies and now he's advising us against it. So he talks about a rewards versus punishment model, where, for example, through the use of social media, the machines use your reactions to determine what to put in front of you next. So negative feedback from social media gains way more reaction and more data for AI than positive feedback. So showing things that are shocking and scary and extreme gets more data for AI to feed off of than things that are positive. So when you think about this, it's very easy for social networks or social media platforms to put out things that enrage people or get them riled up to gain more data to learn from. And this can give you more information on where the best place would be to put these negative things, or where to sell products or advertise and everything like that. A good example here is the YouTube rabbit hole. So YouTube entices people with things like, I bet you can't watch this video, I bet you can't watch this without laughing, or extreme things like that to entice you to click that next link and keep clicking those related links. And I see my niece do this also. So she watches these YouTube videos. They're like about paranormal, it's like some paranormal videos, and I can tell that they're not real, but she doesn't know that. And she's just scared watching them. And I'm like, why do you keep watching these videos if you're so scared of it? And she really doesn't know why. And this is kind of that feedback principle being put into play. You know, you're not sure why you keep watching it, but it's getting a reaction out of you. You're getting riled up, so you're going to keep going. And this is applied to a lot of technology outside of YouTube, but it's really it's really important to pay attention to these things and get a knowledge of them before you become a victim of it. So in popular culture, AI. So Microsoft created a chatbot on Twitter called Tay. This chatbot, pretty simple. It puts out what you put in. So people would tweet to the chatbot, and the chatbot would kind of reflect those tweets and show similar things. So people caught on pretty quickly and started feeding and tweeting to that chatbot racial slurs and offensive slogans. And that chatbot put those slogans back out. So if it was that easy for the public to catch on via Twitter, that if I just put this into the machine will put it back out. Imagine if that technology was sold worldwide to a bunch of children or a group of people that weren't aware of how easily that influence could happen. So we have to be very mindful of these technologies and how they work, and also mindful of the way that people would interact with them when they're available to the public. Another example of AI in popular culture are soap dispensers. Now, the idea may sound silly at first, but it has been proven that hand soap dispensers show bias with darker skin tones. So there's been people who have tried to get hand soap out of an automatic dispenser, and it wouldn't work for darker skin tones. And this is believed to be derived from the fact that those technologies were not tested on darker skin tones. There were no darker engineers in the room to test that technology at the time. And this is just a small peek at how discrimination can, subconsciously be transferred into popular tech. And I would say the most shocking example here is the Cal Gang database. So California has an online gang database where they collect names and demographics of people who are gang members, related to gang members, or associated with gang members. So this database, it was found that officers were putting false information into the database from routine traffic stops. So they would stop someone at a light or something, get their information, and then put them into that database and maybe switch a few things around so that them and anyone associated with them are now, considered gang members or related to gang members. And the really shocking part about this was that there were over 42 names of infants found in that database. And when I say infants, I mean less than 1 year old, babies, in the gang database. So this kind of shows you, how did they get those baby names? Was it because of where they live? Was it because of the type of names they had? Name bias is a thing. Or was it just because, they were just pulled, their names were just pulled just because of, racial discrimination? Maybe their fathers or sisters or brothers were pulled over. And one woman did have her son get into a situation with the police where he was actually pulled over, routine traffic stop, but he was in that database and neither one of them had known that he was in the database. So when he was pulled over, he got charged with gang-related charges, but he was in that database for no reason. He was in there since he was a baby. And this is, this technology that is already out there and it's already being used. So it's important for us to take a step back and look at who's creating these things, who's putting information in these technologies, and how can we make sure that we're not building another unjust system with these things. So what can we do now? The big thing that I think we should do is basic user education. As IT professionals, we know how this stuff works. We know how fast data moves. We know how permanent things are on the internet. And we know that social media and advertisements are all strategic. They're all planned. They're all given for a reason. So a good way to stop this is paid services. Now, I know no one wants to pay for Instagram. No one wants to pay to use, their favorite social media tools. But, that's kind of the only way to get rid of advertisements and things like that. So that is one option. It's not very popular, but it is an option to get rid of at least that advertisement aspect of it. And another thing that we could do is just diversify the engineered groups that are creating these technologies. Black people make up 3% of the industry. So, you know, if we get some more of us in there, you know, not even just Black people, all minorities into the field, we can create technologies that really represent everyone and that are created by groups that represent the population equally and not just, you know, small groups of majorities. And that is the end of my talk. Do we have any questions?
We do have one question so far from YouTube. He asked, I'm sorry, if we extrapolate the new Jim code to AI technology, can the current pushback against institutionalized racism in Canada and the US become a wave for your generation to address?
I absolutely think that it can, but I also think that if we look at how our country was built on racism and, you know, we're still seeing those issues today, and I think it could also just mean a total reconstruction of the way we do things in tech. You know, if we're already seeing racism in technology, we may need to just overall start over and just relay out these rules so that we can start from the ground up with something that is fair.
Awesome. Do you think there is a way to mitigate this bias in programming and coding? That is, you know, anything that's already out there, are there ways we can mitigate it, the effect that it's already having?
To mitigate, I would say it just depends because, you know, big corporations, they have a lot of power, but I also think that user education plays a big role. So I did my own test on TikTok, created an account, and I just scrolled. So I would scroll quickly past things with Black people and, you know, slow down when I didn't see any Black people. And over time, I wasn't seeing any more Black people come up. So if we get a user education and get people to know how these things work, that would be a good start.
Wow, my mind's blown on just that statement you made there.
Yeah.
That's intense. Okay, wow. Tyra, great presentation. Thank you so much. I'll keep an eye out for any other questions before we wrap up. So, let's see. Awesome. So that's our speakers. I mean, I don't think I forgot anybody. I had a good list. So I appreciate everybody coming out. I just want to wrap up. I just want to close out this talk. It's been amazing, and this has been a great work. I wish we could have a round of applause from everybody. So, you know, virtually send your appreciation to everybody. Great job, everybody, and awesome. I mean, some of the stuff you presented just was just, all of it was just amazing. I probably gonna have to go back and watch the recording. Just phenomenal. So what's next? I know for this program, I want to take all the input and just update and improve this program. I'm really excited about how it came out and everybody who participated. So I plan on offering this through BIC at least twice a year. So just keep an eye out. Do not have to be a member of BIC to participate, to sign up. The only reason that we would have you join is just because that's where a lot of the communication goes on at the moment through some of the Slack channels at BIC. So I hope to offer a modified version at some cons, but that will be more a little bit different, or I'll be charging. So we'll see about that. I'll keep an eye out for announcements about that. And hopefully I can, you know, spread this to other nonprofits besides BIC, because remember, the whole goal, the whole point of this is to enable and to give minorities tools for them to go and present at cons. individuals here, these people have done a great job. They've taken a first step at having a presentation out there and just doing something. And just going forth and giving their knowledge, sharing information, just blowing people's minds. And I look forward to what these guys are going to do over the coming years as they're able to just continue to grow and expand and teach other people and share their skill set. So, so that was awesome. And so. Sure.
Really quick,
what else? What you got, Najma?
I just want to say you guys did phenomenal. Like this was awesome, and I hope you guys are feeling good about it because you guys provided great content for this conference. Also, can you all please drop like your LinkedIn or your Twitter or however, whatever method of communication you prefer into the Zoom chat, and then we'll carry that over to the YouTube and things like that. So take a breath and also stay on after this isn't live anymore.
Yep, that's great. So here's some contacts, information about BIC, right? Where to look for announcements, where to get in touch with BIC. They've got Twitter, they've got LinkedIn, they've got a website, which has way more ways to get in touch with them. BIC is doing a lot of activities, a lot of events, even in this quarantined atmosphere that we have here. They're still doing a lot of stuff around the world. So if you want to get involved, you want to help out, you want to participate, check out these channels and keep an eye out for announcements from them. My contact information, how to get in touch with me, you can reach out to me by email. My email is down there. Twitter, I'm on the Twitters, and there's my website where I blog, not very much, but it is there, and I do occasionally post something as well as the presentations I have done. So that's the information I have. So great, thank you guys so much, and really look forward to future events. Keep an eye out and go forth and do great things. This YouTube is going to be up there. Share it with other people, and just some